The reason is being that we posit everything in the context of the society. And we always feel whatever we do, there are two factors to weigh that with. One is the societal good. And if at all it ought to be an individual development, it should not be offending anybody else's sensitivities. But shock, offend, that may not be that accepted in our jurisprudence. But there have been some wonderful judgments, even if you don't ascribe any values to them in terms of our ideologies. You take, for example, that Bijoy Emanuel's case about Jehovah's Witnesses, the students who refused to sing the national anthem, but they respectfully stood. And they were suspended, Then in 1986, the matter was taken up by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that the expression, the freedom of expression includes not to say something which they don't like. And what was considered then was the Prevention of Insults to National Honors Act. There, what's been said, whoever intentionally prevents the singing of the Indian national anthem or causes disturbance to any assembly engaged in singing shall be punished. That's what has been said. So somebody must be causing a prevention. So it's not a mere passive act of not singing. So that way, what they have said for the first time is that the expression includes not only the action, but also the inaction. Then came another case that, Anand Margi's case. That's Acharya Jagdishwar Anand's case. It was in 1983. There they wanted to have the right to dance in the streets of Calcutta with human skulls, daggers, and trishuls. Of course, they predicated that right not on this non-instrumental theory, but on the theory of religious freedom. This is precisely for this reason. In India, this non-instrumental theory has not been developed. They could have argued instead that it is my freedom of expression to do what I feel right to my conscience. Whether it should be beneficial to society is not my concern. So long as it's not been harmful, I should be given the right to practice what I believe in. Instead, they predicated that on the right of their freedom of religion, and that has failed. Whatever, it's in the nascent stage. Maybe the day comes when Indian courts wholeheartedly recognize the non-instrumental theory as well. Then, even in 1920s, American Supreme Court has latched on to this theory of instrumental profit or focus. Later, they moved away. Then you know pretty well, when it comes to monopolizing the free speech or the propagation of speech, say, for example, by controlling the airwaves, that's been diluted for the first time in 1995 in Cricket Association of Bengal's case. It's another landmark. Prior to that was Rangarajan's case, Rangarajan versus Jagjeevan Ram. That was in 1989. There, the court refused to expand or adopt the free market metaphor from American Supreme Court. And Indian Supreme Court has distinguished the conditions that prevail over here. And they've said the relationship between free speech and the promotion of democracy cannot be snapped. But the problem is, democracy means many things for many people. Intuitively, we think that democracy means the majority rule. Please, if you have a smartphone, check any app of dictionary. It says more than that. It's only one of the facets of democracy. Democracy does not per se is majority rule or limited to that one, but it is a facet of it. On those lines proceeded, way back in 1975, a decision of state of Uttar Pradesh versus Raj Narayan. There, again for the first time, the court has said the right to know is also a part of free speech. And in fact, that has given rise to our Right to Information Act. Then came from this right, the right of accountability. The moment you have the right to know, say for example about your public representative, you can as well demand his accountability. And there's been, again, treated as part of this right to know. This is another development of this free speech jurisprudence. But when it comes to non-instrumental theory, if at all we want any decision of importance in the recent times, NAS Foundation. The NAS Foundation is the one that has been allowed on the concept of individual identity, individual preference, and it has nothing to do with the societal interest. Maybe more and more judgments in the offing on those lines, so that we can as well say that we've been on a par with the European jurisprudence when it comes to non-instrumental theory. Friends, in the domain of free speech, even commercial speech has been added. But beginning in 1960, when it comes to Hamda Dawakana, court said commercial speech is not part of 19(1)(a). But later, in 1995, that was reversed. That was in Tata Press Limited. But you just see, is a commercial speech a facet of free speech? Is it not a facet of 19(1)(g)? The right to carry on your business, and this commercial speech will aid your business. And in what way, if at all you take instrumental theory, which is our darling, in what way a commercial speech is going to improve that content? But anyway, the courts have treated that as part of 19(1)(a) rather than 19(1)(g). Right. Now, you know pretty well, treated special, or particularly distinctly in Indian Constitution. It has been treated as, like any individual, you take Sakal Papers case of 1962, you take Bennett and Coleman of 72, or Indian Express of 85, they've all said, yes, there are various facets to this one, and they had to be protected. But they don't enjoy any privilege or immunity other than being an ordinary citizen. That's the bottom line for that one. Now, how about the rights of television, rights of the movies? You know pretty well that there have been great strides made in that one, beginning from Odyssey Communications, that was in 1988. Then I've talked about this Cricket Association of Bengal. But here, the Supreme Court has taken an innovative path. Instead of saying that state has no monopoly, it has said state has regulatory power. That's because essentially airwaves are a limited resource, a national source. It can't be frittered away in the name of freedom. So that's why the license regime has had its justification, and the test of reasonableness has been introduced. And eventually, let me come to the final phase of it, that is Section 66A of the Information Technology Act, which has been struck down in Shreya Singhal. That was as recently as in 2015. Perhaps it is one of the most momentous judgments after Vijay Emmanuel. It has again taken the route of non-instrumental theory, and there they have said that, yes, the test that's been laid under that particular provision has been very vague and undefining. It's amorphous, and it tends to occupy more space than it deserves. That's why it has to be struck down. And there are some shortcomings, some failures in our judicial path in interpreting, especially when it offends the religious sentiments of people or pet notions of whatever they feel. For example, if I have got my caste man is being revered, then somebody writes a critical article about him. I say that that has offended my sensibility. After all, a free marketplace of ideas, if at all you want to demolish my theory, come up with a better theory rather than going for banning of those books. Then, you know, sedition, it's still been there in 124A, and banning of books has become the order of the day, though not anymore. But these are the aspects we have been still grappling with. I feel freedom of speech has been in abundance. In its application, there are gray areas or crevices still which need more light shed on that aspect. But eventually, indeed, comparatively, if you think of, say, American jurisprudence or the British common law jurisprudence, India has not been lagging behind, but certainly it has certain areas it has to wake up to. And perhaps when it comes to the brilliance of the bar, I believe India has most vibrant legal fraternity. And you have seen that once a politician means he must have been a lawyer. All our constitutional makers were lawyers. All our politicians in 1950s to 70s were lawyers. And to this day, still the major judgments have been rendered at the behest of lawyers, including Shreya Singhal. So, friends, I believe Goa Bar in size a miniature one, but it's what do you call that, a microcosmic world. You have invited even from Supreme Court one of the most landmark judgments because of your innovative thinking. I believe that your thinking will help free speech as well. And I'm really beholden that you have spent your time this evening with me and you have made me share my ideas with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As far as the interactive sessions is concerned, sir, may I request the members of the bar to raise their hands. Whoever wants to pose any question or have any interaction. Only I request your lordships to choose from the persons raising the hand, because it will be on this platform, it will be easier to coordinate it better.
As you like.
If any person has a question, please.
You have the time to take revenge because I always put you questions. Now you can put me on the mat. I see Mr. Lutliker over his mouth because I question him more. Yes, Mr. Ivankar, we are friends. We represent the state in some sense. Please tell me, Mr. Ivankar.
My lord, my one query is that what is today's latest trend that media conducting on trials?
Yes.
Is it a what category? Is it a media trial? Or is it
it's a very wonderful question. And recently, a couple of days ago, even Bombay High Court, in the case of Sushant, what's the full names? Sushant Rajput, right? In his case, said that please have some restraint. And many a time, Supreme Court has said, but it has come short of imposing any restrictions on this one. And you know, in 200th report of Law Commission by M. Jagannath Rao, Justice M. Jagannath Rao, there was a recommendation to amend Section 3 of Contempt of Courts Act. There, the lis pendens doctrine has been defined, saying that when it comes to any pending criminal proceeding, only from the date of charge sheet, the lis pendens will apply. Instead, Law Commission wanted that to be from the date of registration of crime. But Parliament has not chosen to amend. That's why still this lis pendens doctrine applies. But even when it comes to CPC, we know interpretatively, pendency begins only from Section 6, Order 16 stage. That's framing of issues, not before that. Maybe it's a legislative measure. Then, until then, press tries people, sentences, and even implements. Yes.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Freedom of speech and contempt jurisdiction.
Yes. Yes.
Jurisdiction in contempt.
Some thoughts on that.
Mr. Lotlikar, recently I forced you to take a matter to Delhi and you want to take revenge on me to touch on a very, very controversial aspect now. See, yes, a person like Lord Denning has said, it is time we buried contempt. But in Indian scenario, kindly remember one thing. You know, an international research has revealed Indians are very prone to believe anything in print or on the screen than any other section of people in the world. And you have seen a simple message can lead to, a WhatsApp message can lead to lynching in this country. And I'll tell you, not defending, as a matter of fact, bona fide, I decide a case. You may win, you may lose. If you start hurling abuse and imputing motives to me, which way can I defend myself? The common law tradition says a judge should speak through his judgments alone. I'll tell you a classic example. When Obama became the president of America, that state of nation address, American Supreme Court Chief Justice was also invited conventionally, as a matter of tradition. John Roberts went over there. Then Obama was speaking about the role of the courts. At one sentence, John Roberts, sitting behind, nodded his head across. He did nothing else than nodding his head across. The next day, newspapers came down heavily on the Chief Justice, saying he has no business to express his views except through his judgments. That's the sensitivity under common law traditions. So unless you have that minimum protection, really remember, I'm talking about not all, at least a few judges, they do sacrifice and they do believe in justice. They do their best to do that one. If somebody disgruntled or dissatisfied is out to destroy my reputation, where should I go? I honestly say that that's the only asset I have. If somebody takes it away, I need to have some protection. If it's been abused, yes, there could be some checks and balances. But doing away with may be quite premature. It's a defense of myself than defending the principle. Thank you. Yes, madam? Desai. Desai rather.
Good evening, my lord.
Yes, good evening.
Sir, my question was particularly now these days we find that there's a lot of on social media a lot of comments coming anti-religious, anti-national. I would label them as anti-social. And when a complaint is filed, then the complainant goes from one place to the other because the jurisdiction is not decided. Neither the cybercrime looks at it nor the police looks at it, and then it goes haywire. So well, we need to devise something like that. So how do we actually go about with a complaint? If there's something on social media, particularly someone's living abroad, then it comes beyond our jurisdiction. How do we go about with it?
Madam, simple solution is this. In the next election, please contest, go to parliament and raise this question. My duty is only to implement law that's already been there. I can't make laws. But it's a fit question. It shows you can become an MP. All the very best. Yes. Yes, Nigel? I can't hear you. Please unmute yourself.
Yes.
You know, when Nigel says 1 minute, I am prepared for 1 hour. Yes. Yes, Nigel.
Mr. Lodlikar, in fact, I asked partly the question which I wanted to ask.
Yes.
Regarding contempt jurisdiction, Your Lordship, now the issue is right to fair criticism of a judgment. So
Yes.
where do we draw the line between fair criticism and
See,
actual...
Nigel, when it comes to judgment, criticism need not be fair. It can be unfair also. No bar on that one. The only thing is criticism vis-a-vis the judge. Tear my judgment apart. I am happy and I learned something from that. But don't attack me. That's the ratio behind contempt law. If the judgment doesn't meet the established standards, yes, it has to be criticized. And there are judges who have corrected themselves because of the criticism. Because we are human, we tend to make errors. So this concept of fair criticism does not apply to judgments. Fair criticism applies to judiciary as a whole or judges per se. A judgment is a public product. Jurisprudentially, it can be exposed. And you can dissect and you can point out. And your criticism may be wrong. Motive is the prohibited aspect, not the meaning. Yes.
So it's more of like a personal, you don't attack the judges personally. That's what you're mentioning.
Yes, that's it. You can say the judgment has been wrong. It has not understood the principles.
You cannot attribute motives. That's what.
That's it.
God bless.
Yes.
But just in continuation of what Nigel had questioned, that once it has been held that there is a contempt, then my lord, there has to be some kind of a standard that has to be made that A should be the standard where the punishment has to be, or can it be anything?
In my judgments, a couple of judgments, one in Bombay, one in Kerala, I have written about a concept called Sisyphean burden. If you Google with my name, you will get those two judgments. Sisyphean burden. You know what's meant by Sisyphean burden? It's in Roman mythology that Sisyphean was given a task by the gods to roll up the mountain a big block of stone. He rolls it up, and by the time he rests, it rolls down to the bottom. That's the problem with certain concepts judicially, as we have been grappling, say, for example, alternative remedy. Right. So, however much you write about that one, still the next morning, you will have a question ready for you with another judgment, another case. So, these are the concepts which always take a new color based on the context, the time, the meaning, and setting. So, fixed principles is the last thing the judicial, rather our courts want. Our legal system wants. We should never fix anything in a straight formula. They should always be what you call free play in the joints. So it's in the interest of the growth of the law that those concepts should be open-ended. If you fix 2 into 2, 4 like, then it leads to tyranny, even in the name of judiciary. That should not be there.
What about the free right? If it's the punishment is not proportionate, then it would embolden other people. What about that part of it?
I'll tell you. See, for example, our system is adversarial system, whereas the European system that's called civil law system is inquisitorial. And adversarial system, a judge is more or less an arbitratum. He will not take sides. He will not be an investigator. He will not be the hangman, whatever. But when it comes to contempt jurisprudence, it's non-adversarial. The petitioner in contempt is only an informant, not a contesting party. The moment he informs the court, his role comes to an end. Then it's between the contemner and the court. That's why the informant will not have the right of appeal. Only the contemner will have that right. So that's why if at all the court, despite the gravity of the offense, if court feels it wants to look the other way, maybe in the interest of overall interest of things, fraternity, whatever, we just have to leave at that one. It's completely subjective. Yes. Anything else? And you know pretty well that from yesterday or day before yesterday onwards, Goa has opened pubs, restaurants, bars, etc. I'm waiting my friends to come from Hyderabad. Yes.
We're sorry, my lord, if we are delaying, my lord, by asking this session.
Yes, please. Any other question? May I say thank you very much to all of you?
Yes, sir. Sir, may I just request in the Vice President of the Bar Association to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Justice D.S. Naidu, Senior Counsels, President of the Association, Executive Members, on behalf of the Association, I thank Justice Naidu for addressing the members of the association. It was a brilliant address on first principles at a time when dissent is the flavor of our times. And Justice Naidu has taken us through the history of freedom of speech and dissent. Thank you, Justice Naidu, and thank you all for attending this virtual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.